welcome to Ditch Digger CEO. We're here today with a gentleman I met years ago in Tel Aviv. He was speaking at an event for entrepreneurs, and man, the entrepreneurs in the room were fired up to listen to this guy. So we're blessed to have him today. I actually got to be friends with Yuri afterwards, and what a spectacular person. And you know, it's pronounced Uri, not Yuri. I was sorry to get that messed up because I've got some friends who pronounce Yuri, but it's Uri. So Uri Levine, really appreciate you being here today. Thanks for being here. You're an awesome person that we're blessed to be able to listen to and have as a friend.
Thank you.
So Uri, I've got my nephew Joey here with me today. He might have a couple of questions, and then Chris always throws in a couple, and at the end we really want to just go over kind of what are the laws of success in the mind of Uri, and how do you look at life and how do you look at entrepreneurship? So we do that every time, and so at the end we'll have 5 or 6 things, maybe more like maybe 8 or 10 from you, but on basically what creates success in your mind when it comes to entrepreneurship and building businesses and startups and everything you've done. I'm excited also about your book coming up, so I wanted to talk about the book because I'm excited about that book. I want to order a couple hundred copies for my friends because I know it's going to be one that delivers a lot of impact. So welcome to Ditch Digger CEO. Appreciate you being here. Can you go ahead and start with kind of if you can, start with a little bio, who you are and what your mission is in life, and start with that.
So yeah, my name is Uri Levine, and probably you would know me as the founder of Waze, and I would imagine that most of the drivers in the US do use Waze. But I'm also after the Waze was acquired by Google, I started dozens of other startups, and I guide CEOs and I mentor them, and I ended up with becoming an author of the book Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution, which is maybe fulfilling the second part of Uri, right? So there is one part that everyone knows, Uri is the entrepreneur, and there is another one that Uri is the teacher, and I feel equally rewarded when I build stuff myself or when I guide someone to build it and they are successful in that. And the book is fulfilling my destiny of creating value. Because at the end of the day, I think that this is my destiny: create value through solutions that I build for real problems, and create value to the CEOs that I guide, and create value to all the entrepreneurs through presentations and through this book. I'm Israeli. I live in Tel Aviv. I'm 57 years old, so not that young anymore. But for a second, I would say it's probably a state of mind, right? And I would say that when people don't stop dreaming when they become old. They become old when they stop dreaming. And I always dream.
I love it. I agree 100%. Uri, when I think about the people I look upon as entrepreneurs, many of these people are now in their 80s and 90s, and they're still thinking 20 years ahead. And when I speak to these people, when I hang out with them, I'll tell you what, it's exciting as heck to think about, to listen to them, right? To listen to them in their vision of what it's going to be like in 2040, 2050, right? And when we're with those people, I mean, they have, we have energy. They create energy on their own, and we then transfer that energy, and it makes us think even further than we may have otherwise, right? So you do that. You're a beacon of light to so many. Again, when I heard you speak at Tel Aviv University years ago, everybody in the room was fired up because you're thinking years ahead always. You just got through one of the biggest sales in the history of technology, and yet you had like 10 more things going on, and you were just excited about those 10 things as you were the Waze and the success you had there. But I think you said it best. I'm 59 now, and I think the same way. I want to be the old guy that doesn't seem like the old guy, because I'm constantly thinking about solving problems and building business and building entrepreneurs. Because when we do that, boy, we create energy and impact, right? That you might not be able to create otherwise.
Yeah, exactly, and occasionally I would say we are doing that because we can.
Yeah, exactly.
Create impact, and when we are doing that.
And so when you think about the, let's go over Waze. If you can go over the brief. I know it's a long story, but the brief story of Waze and how that came about. Because everybody, like you said, everybody listening to this podcast knows Waze and uses it every day. Matter of fact, I used to drive around and I remember everywhere I went. So you've kind of messed me up. I got to tell you, it messed me up a little bit because I used to remember everywhere I went on the road, and I could go there one time, and it could be 50 miles away from my house. And 2 years later, I could find my way back. Okay. Now, I mean, I can find my way back much faster than I ever did, but I could never do it without your technology anymore. So but it probably freed up my brain to think about other things. And,
Exactly. Yeah, in the same way that we don't remember phone numbers anymore because we don't need to.
Yes.
And most of the phone numbers that I easily remember are friends from school, right? Because back then you had to.
Right.
And we ended up with freeing up some of the space in our mind in order to actually have capture other things and think of other things. But for a second, I would say, and I will go back into the probably the beginning of all the startups in the world. And they're always starting with an emotional engagement, right? You run into something that you really like and you tell yourself, this is how stuff should be done, right? Or you run into something that you really hate and you tell yourself, no, must be a different way to do that. And I hate traffic jams, right? And then you allow yourself to think more and more and more until you build the passion and the commitment and the decision that you're basically saying, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. And there is willing to sacrifice, and there is realization that this is going to be a roller coaster journey. And the word journey will return multiple times through this conversation, because at the end of the day, if I need to define a startup, then I would say this is a long roller coaster journey of failures, right? So there are three elements to that. One is it's going to be really long. And because when you run a business, in most cases, you already know what is your product and who are the customers and how much they're going to pay and how you're going to bring new customers. And pretty much if you maintain the current course, most likely you'll be successful. If you're building a startup, then you don't have a product. You don't even know who your customers are. You're not even sure what is the story that you're going to tell them. You definitely don't have a business model. And you don't know how to bring the customers, right? And so there are multiple journeys that you'll need to go through in order to make it successful. And these are long, and each one of them is a journey of failures. Albert Einstein used to say that if you haven't failed, that because you haven't tried anything new before. If you're going to try new things, you will fail. And so
if you haven't failed, it's because you haven't tried anything new.
You fail every day, right? And conversation that I had earlier today with Adi, she said, I have 30 items on my list, and it's not shrinking, it's growing. And I said, you know what, we're going to make some of them, and some of them we won't. And that's it.
I would say fail fast and fail forward, right? Fall forward and you're back up going forward, and you remember what caused the failure, and it's a great lesson for future success.
It's even more significant, right? Because once you realize that this is a journey of failures, then there are two immediate conclusions, right? The number one is, if you're afraid to fail, then in reality, you already failed because you're not going to try. The second one, which is even more important, is that you have to fail fast. Because when you fail fast, you actually have enough time, enough resources, enough funding to make another attempt, to try something else, and to keep on trying until you find one thing that does work. Because at the end of the day, this is what we are looking for. Now, in general, I would say for all the startups in the world, the first journey is always going to be figuring out product market fit. And by product market fit, what I really mean is creating value to your customers or to your users, right? If you don't create value, then there is no reason for your existence. In reality, if you don't figure out product market fit, you will die, as simple as that. If you do, then two things is going to happen. Number one, you're probably going to be successful because you figure out a way to create value. And if you figure out a way to create value, then the rest will follow. The second one and this is really important, is at the end of the day, if you figure out product market fit, you actually bought yourself a ticket to the next part of the journey. So now you can go into figuring out business model or figuring out growth. And again, each one of them is going to be a journey of failures. But going back to product market fit, and this is really important, you never heard of a company that did not figure out product market fit? They simply died. That's it, right? And you never heard of them. Those that did, and this is where it becomes really interesting. And for a second, I would say, think of, all the applications that you're using every day, right? Being Waze, being searching Google, being Facebook, Uber, whatever it is, right? And ask yourself, what is the difference between any of those applications that you're using today and the first time that you have used that? And the answer is that there is no difference. We are searching Google today the same way that we search Google for the first time in our life. We are using Waze today the same way, or Uber, or Netflix, or whatever it is. So once you figure out product market fit, which is the value that you bring to your users, you don't change that anymore. And this is really important. You're doing a lot of other things, right? So you need to figure out the business model, you need to figure out growth, you increase the addressable market, you need to take care of the technology so it wouldn't crash once you have a lot of users. But from the value proposition to the users or to the customers, it doesn't change anymore. And again, if you don't figure out product market fit, you will die.
How about when we think about changing value propositions, right? I mean, like you always say, to fall in love with the problem, not the solution, right? If you can constantly understand the problems and they're ever-changing problems, right? Hopefully you stay on top of the changing value proposition, because you like plenty of companies, big companies like Blockbuster or Kodak cameras and film, right? That maybe didn't realize the changing value proposition that somebody else was figuring out before them, right? And they didn't change fast enough.
So now we are speaking about market disruption, right? And these are awesome examples, right? Because you think about what essentially killed Kodak was digital camera, right? Now you ask yourself, so who invented the digital camera? Kodak did.
Did they really?
They did, actually, in 1976 in their lab. And they called the CEO to show the CEO the new invention that they just created. And he said, shh, don't tell anyone, right? So
wow.
Obviously you cannot, and by the way, Blockbuster and Netflix is even more amazing story because Netflix CEO came to Blockbuster CEO and asked him to acquire them twice, right? And they said no. And in their management meeting, what they basically said is that whatever they can do, we can do better.
Yes.
When you think about it, it was the same with Microsoft and the iPhone, right? So 2007, Steve Jobs presents the iPhone, and Steve Ballmer, at the time CEO of Microsoft, says this will never work, right? Maybe in other words, but essentially said this will never work. And the important part is that when you really look at disruptors, they are always newcomers. They are the ones that have nothing to lose. And this is really critical to understand the market. Now, existing corporates have very hard time to disrupt their market because it's scary, right? Because they're afraid of the change. Because what happened is that the DNA of the company, of a corporate, in most cases, is it has a lot of fear of failure, right? And people are afraid to fail. People are afraid. If you're afraid to fail, then you're not going to try new things, and that's it, right? There is more in, right?
Yeah, fear of failure is such an important thing to realize that, so many, once they're set in their ways, once they have their wealth and their success, right? They become fearful. They start out entrepreneurial, and eventually, whether they're bought out by a bigger company or they stick with it and they somehow grow to, hundreds of millions or billions, often they get to be in fear of failure, and that becomes their demise. You may know this. I think I may have introduced you to Bijou when you were in town, and Bijou was one of the founders of Redbox, and Redbox also went to Blockbuster and was looking for investments, and they turned him away. And then later on, I interviewed Mark Randolph from Netflix. Had the same exact story. So Blockbuster could be such a big behemoth, right? They were so in fear of failure that they wouldn't pony up the 40, $50 million to buy out one of these companies to understand if they could create a new value proposition. And boy, that's a lesson that anybody can learn from, hopefully.
I think that the most important thing, and this is really major message to corporates that thinks about innovation, right? And in particular, if you think of disruption, and there are a few really important insights here. Number one is that corporate cannot innovate or cannot disrupt their own market because they are afraid of the change because of ego management, right? And because in particular, corporates, look, entrepreneurs are troublemakers. Corporates don't like troublemakers, right? Most likely they don't even have the right persona.
Hold on. I love this, what you're saying, right? Entrepreneurs are troublemakers. Big corporations.
They challenge things. Yeah. They don't take things for granted, and they challenge things. And the result is that in the large corporations, they don't survive. But the most important thinking of disruption is, and I will define for a second disruption as change in the market equilibrium, right? So it has nothing to do with technology. It could be because of a new product that is being introduced to the market that changed the market equilibrium. A new product could be a result of new technology. It could be a new price, right? Look, nearly all the people that I know are using Gmail, right? Gmail is 17 years old. Before that, we used to pay money in order to have a mailbox. And then Google introduced Gmail, and at the beginning it was not good enough, but after a few iterations, it became good enough and free. And that's it. No one can compete with good enough and free. No one can compete with that. But I want us to think for a second on the disruption that Uber introduced into the taxi drivers market, right? Or on-demand trips. And all the taxi drivers in the world, they hate Uber. But when Uber introduced their solution, the market essentially today is more than 10 times bigger than before. 10 times bigger. In this 10 times bigger, there's room for Uber, there is room for Lyft, there is room for 99 Taxi, there is room for Grab, there is 3 times more room for medallion taxi drivers. So their market increased 3-fold because of Uber.
Wow.
And the most important statement that you need to think of disruption is that if disruption is about changing market equilibrium, then the new market, by definition, is way better than the previous one. And so the opportunity is way bigger than the threat. And only then you can start to think about it as an opportunity and not as a threat, because most corporates will see disruption as a threat. But if you start to think about it as an opportunity, then maybe you will tell yourself, you know what? My way to grow is actually if the market shifts. And if the market shifts, I want to have a position in the new market, and that new market is going to be much bigger than before, and therefore this is how my company is going to grow. And then you actually, so there are 2 things that you actually need to do. One is understand when it's about to happen. So how do you detect disruption that is due or potentially disruption to the market? And that's really easy. Once a year, take the top management, maybe with some external consultant, and ask yourself one question. What will make me irrelevant? So if you can think of something that will make you irrelevant in the market in 5 or 10 years, there is someone else that can think about it as well. And that's someone that might be building right now something that will make you irrelevant. And
that's a great question. We all need to ask ourselves. That's for sure. Yuri, last time I talked to you, you were out and you came out to visit for a couple of days. I had a blast with you. I introduced you to a bunch of my friends who are entrepreneurs. They all got a kick out of it. Just really we're excited to meet you and listen to you and stuff and just hang out with you. But you remember we started that company Site back then. Site was the company where we used drones to assess the condition of real estate pavements, and it was originally just pavements back then, Uri. And then so now it's roofs and pavements, and now we're getting the engineering completed right now, the artificial intelligence engineering completed for facades, and then next will be landscaping and lighting and everything else. And we only really hit the biggest buildings in the world. We're working for the biggest industrial building owners, biggest retailers in the country, and many of which are biggest in the world: Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, Prologis, Blackstone, and so on. And that little business has grown to probably about $100 million valuation now, and growing fast. And and believe me, talking to you as we're starting this thing up, we've thought about, what do we, are we hurting our industry? Because back then we were taking basically the job. We knew that we were going to take the jobs of engineers like our own, who walk properties physically and then come back with assessments 3 or 4 weeks later on a 1 million square foot property. And we knew that we were going to shrink that time in a fraction. It turned out to be about 5% of the time now that it takes, as well as be able to do way more of these in a course of a day or a week or a month. Just hundreds of times more. So we thought about this. The industry said to us that, boy, you're going to be taking the jobs of engineers, right? Well, guess what? Our engineers and other engineers they would only do maybe 1%, maybe 2% of all the properties in the world from our customers. The problem properties were the ones that got attention before. Now our customers like Prologis and Blackstone and these customers now, they're doing 100% of their properties because it's so inexpensive, it's so easy to use, and the technology is getting better and better and better, and the engineering is incredible. So again, now we're doing 100% of the properties for our customers instead of 1 or 2%, and those engineers that somebody would say would be replaced are busier than ever, because now you need consultative minds in engineering to help figure out what they're doing going forward besides our product. And so it's really created an industry that wasn't there before. So I remember all this that, because I was talking to you about this initially, some people were like, oh gosh, your engineers are going to be really pissed because you're going to take a lot of engineering jobs. Well, no, we're realizing it's creating more jobs than ever. And the customer has better information now to make better decisions than they've ever had before. So when I talked to you back then, Uri, we may have been up to about 100 million square feet of assessments. We started at 50 million physically doing assessments of 50 million square feet of pavements. We were probably at 100 or 150 million when I talked to you last. We're now over 5 billion square feet of pavement assessment. And now we're into roofs, and that just got completed about 8 months ago or a year ago. And then we'll be into facades and everything else. So it's a product that's just growing crazy, serving a need that was never served before. So, we fell in love with the problem, and as you guided us, right?
And it was obvious back then that essentially once it works, then you're going to increase your addressable market by 1,000 folds, right? And this is exactly what happened, right? Because until then, the cost on one hand, the duration on the other hand, the ability to fulfill was the barrier for the market, because everyone needs that, right? Everyone needs that. And the information that you can provide is dramatically going to help them to become more successful, right, in their businesses. And obviously in your businesses as well. Right.
So tell me, okay, people want to hear about, I know the story because I read about it and you told me about it, but the story of Waze, if you could give that like the 3, 4, 5 minute story of Waze, and then tell us about, what you see as one of or two of your most exciting projects going forward, your most exciting journeys going forward, whether it be in Move It or Seed Tree or Live Care or whatever.
So cool. When we started, and one of the reasons that we started is that I really hate traffic jams, and I tried to figure out a way to address that. And there was a moment of time that I realized that really what I want is someone to be ahead of me on the road and tell me what's going on. And this is it, right? And the magic of Waze is that Waze crowdsources everything. Not just traffic information, and this is being done automatically because when you drive someplace, we know how fast you are going, and based on your speed, we know if there is traffic jams there or not, and we can report back to the rest of the drivers that there is a traffic jam there, and essentially recalculate the fastest route every time. But the real magic of Waze is that we crowdsource the map data as well. And so when we started, the Waze map was a blank page. There was absolutely nothing on the map. And when the first driver drove, we collected the GPS data from the device. And if we take this GPS data and draw that, then we're going to get exactly all the turns and all the directions that this person went, right? And if you're going to take that from a lot of drivers, you actually get the entire grid of where people are driving, right? And which intersection they're making turns. And if there is an intersection that no one is making left turn, then no left turn is allowed, right? And this is exactly what we did. We built a software that takes all of this data and creates the map. And at the beginning, obviously, the map is incomplete. So everyone realized that, wait a minute. So what you're telling me is that at the beginning, there was no roads. And so why would people use that, right? And in many cases, those users were enthusiastic amateurs, were the early adopters of the GIS GPS space, and they really like the idea that they can control their own destiny with the map. And and so we launched that. We started our journey in 2007 by saying this is what we're going to do, and we had some hard time to raise capital. We only raised capital at the beginning of 2008, and we started the company. The first version of Waze was running on a PDA. Remember, long time ago, there were dinosaurs and then PDAs and then Nokia phones. And today we all have iPhones and Android, right? This long time ago is 15 years. That's it. This is how fast things are changing. You know, maybe I've recently read that Elon Musk have lost $200 billion this year. And we tend to forget that he actually created that the year before. But 15 years ago, there was no Tesla.
Yep.
So if we will have a time machine and I will send all of us back into 2007, then that means that I'm going to take away our iPhone and Facebook and Tesla and Uber and Waze and Netflix and pretty much everything that we're using every day, right? And this is how fast things are changing. Once the
world will be a different place for sure.
You know, people ask me occasionally, so what does it mean for the next decade, right? And the reality is that we don't know, right? We fail to see the far future. We might be able to see the near future, but we fail to see the far future because of revolutions and non-linear path between now and the far future. But occasionally I will tell people, you know what, just imagine, think of the top 10 companies of the world today in terms of market cap and ask yourself, so who is going to remain in the top 10 in 2033, right? And the answer is only 5. We don't know which one. If we would know, I will tell you, sell short on the other and this is it, right?
Yeah.
We don't know. The more important part will be which companies are going to replace them in the top 10. And some of those, you haven't heard their name yet.
Some haven't started.
They probably have started because the first decade is a journey of establishing the cornerstones for becoming extremely successful. So the first decade for most of the companies is going to be around figuring out product market fit, figuring out growth, figuring out business model, and only then you are really ready to take off. And this is how, this is why innovations and disruption and changing markets is so dramatic, because when it happens, it makes things completely different than the way that they were before. And people cannot even imagine what it was like before. So Waze, we launched the product in 2009 in Tel Aviv, and it was actually pretty good. And so we decided that we can go everywhere with the product because of the self-created maps and the magic that of the flywheel that serves the system. And it turns out that it's not good enough. It was not good enough in the US. It was not good enough in Europe. It was not good enough in Latin America. It was good enough in a very few places, like you know, Czech Republic and Latvia and Ecuador, so very small places. And this is what happens, right? So you think about it and you say, okay, wait a minute. We realize that it's not good enough. People like the story, so they download the app, they try it, and they quit. And so we called them up and we asked them why, what happened, right? And they told us what didn't work. And we go back into the engineering room and we create the next version that we know that is going to address all the issues that they've told us. And we know that this is it, and it's not. And so we're doing it all over again. We speak with the drivers. They tell us what doesn't work for them. We build the next version. We know that this is it, and it's not. Iteration after iteration after iteration, right? Journey of failures, right? Every time you go with the conviction that this is it, and it's not. And it was full year of iterations until we started to become good enough. And once you become good enough, and Waze was free, then you start to see how things become, how you reach your critical mass, or how you become the talk of the town in multiple places. In the US, it was Los Angeles first, and then San Francisco, and then Washington, D.C., and Atlanta, and Chicago, and New York, and one metropolitan after that. In Europe, it was one country after that, or Italy first, and then Netherlands, and then France, and Spain, and Sweden, and one country after that. In Latin America, one country after that. And then in 2012, Waze was growing faster than the entire industry combined. So you take all navigation devices and all navigation apps and all in-car navigation system, and Waze was outgrowing all of them combined.
Wow.
And in 2013, Google came with a proposal to acquire us, and we said yes. Now, people often ask me whether or not it was the right decisions, and I will tell them, look, there are right decisions or no decisions, because when you make a decision, you don't know what it would be like if you'll choose a different path, right? So we mentioned earlier Blockbuster and Netflix, right? What would have happened if they would have said yes?
Yeah.
Know that, right?
Yeah.
Google failed to raise capital at the beginning. They had very hard time, and they approached Yahoo and asked Yahoo to acquire them for $2 million. 2 million, not 2 billion, not 2 trillion, 2 million. And they say no. And you say, big mistake, right? We don't know that. We don't know what would have happened if they would have said yes.
Uri, one thing you mentioned a couple of times here, and I want to go with this because I think it's a mistake I see a lot in my own companies, right? We have really smart engineers, really smart people. Sometimes they want perfect, and before they go to market, they think it should be perfect. Well, you said good enough many times here, right? And tell me about that, good enough compared to people that want perfect that never get to market, right? Sometimes. So talk about that a little bit if you could.
So for a second, I would say the biggest enemy of good enough is perfect. The reality is that those that are going to win the market are going to be those that are good enough. Because imagine that we have two twin sisters companies, right? And they are building exactly the same product. And they are making similar progress until a certain point of time that one of them is saying, you know what, I'm going to go to the market with what I have. And the other one is saying, you know what, it's embarrassing to go to the market with the product that we have. We're going to wait. We're going to polish it again and again and finish it more and more and more until it's ready. What happened at this phase is that the first company is going to learn so much faster because you get the feedbacks of the real users. And only once you get the feedback of the real users, you can actually improve dramatically. And so up until that moment, they were twin sisters, and all of a sudden, one of them is keep on growing exactly at the same pace, and the other one is growing fast. And growing fast because they are learning fast. And if an entrepreneur will come to me and say, my product is not ready yet, I will tell him, look, the first thing that you need to do is launch. Because only then you're going to get feedbacks from the user. And if they will tell me, this is going to be embarrassing, then I say, look, I've been embarrassed so many times. Don't worry about it. Right? Get out. But the other part of it, which is more important, is that occasionally people will tell me, if the product is not ready, then we're going to hurt our brand name. And I will tell them, look, you don't even have users. You don't have brand name. You don't have users, there's nothing for you to lose, right? And even if you'll displease them, the first users, then you'll have the next users and the next users. And the main role of you is learning from those users in order to improve the product for the next users. And there is only one way to do that: get out.
Yeah, and you also talked about when I got to spend time with you, feedback loop, right? And we put people in charge of the feedback loop in that company I told you about, and since then we've done it with all our companies, right? I mean, no matter whether technology, your construction services, your whatever you are, retail, whatever the business is, right? The more you communicate with those customers to understand their problem, right? Understand what didn't go right. What would you see as something better, right? The faster you grow. And that feedback loop, is something in technology. If you don't have a strong team, on the feedback loop, forget it. In my opinion, somebody's gonna catch you and surpass you pretty fast. I didn't really understand that well until getting into the couple of little technology companies we have, and now I realize how important it is for all our companies.
So let me give you a story from, you mentioned Mark Randolph from Netflix earlier, and Netflix. The beginning of their journey, they did something completely different, right? There was essentially DVD on demand via the mail.
Yep.
And that was the first decade for them. And they only decided to change that once they started to hear feedback from the users that saying, you know what, I order a comedy, and by the time it got here, and it was a day later, I felt like I want to see something else, right? And this is where the on-demand came to their thought process from the feedback. But in general, I would say the feedback loop is so dramatic, and companies that are doing it well, they share the feedback with all departments, right? So not just product or customer service, but also engineering. Because when you hear a user tells you, I didn't figure out what to do, and you hear that multiple times, then you realize that the product is complex, right? Because until that moment, it seems like this is an argument between engineering and product, right? And the feedbacks from real users is the one that actually helps the entire organization to improve. And so one of the practices that we have in all of our companies is that everyone hears the feedbacks. Occasionally we will send engineers to speak with customers, right? Because even though that usually it's not exactly the dialogue that you expect, but the engineers will learn so much from that.
Sure.
And that turns out to become, it creates your ability to listen to your customers, to your users, way better throughout the entire organization.
And I think the thing that we don't realize often, Uri, is that we create relationships of trust through that feedback loop that you wouldn't have otherwise. When you're sincere and you honestly are trying to solve their problem, right? They feel it, they know it. And for us, we had customers that were using our product, and I'm talking about Site right now again, that were yours and my age, right? But they're more like me on the technology side, not like you. Okay, so they weren't comfortable using this technology, so we had to make it very simple for them. And there couldn't be a lot of gadgets, right? And then we had younger people that embraced this thing, and we could throw more and more at them, and they would take it all on, right? And if we just listened to one of those customers, the product wouldn't be so good. But if we listen to all those customers, we can customize it for the user. Now you got something. And the relationships we built with these customers are unbelievable. And with those relationships, our other businesses have all grown too, because these customers not only enjoy the consulted product that this is, then they use our construction services too. So trust through the feedback loop, I think, is so important.
Right, but there is way more into it, and this is there is a chapter in my book that speaks about understanding users, right? And it starts with a story with Steve Wozniak, one of the co-founders of Apple, that eventually he wrote by forward, and he called that the Bibles for entrepreneurs. And we met back in 2015 at a conference in Latin America, and we were both speakers at the conference. In the evening before, we had dinner, and I thought I would like to have a selfie with Woz, and I took my iPhone out, and on iPhone, if you want to take a picture, you can click here on the screen, or you can use the volume button on the side, right? And so I was taking a selfie using the volume button, and he said, finally. And I said, finally what? He said, finally someone using it the way that I meant it to be. And the important part is that we need to realize that there is no right or wrong. There are different users that are going to use the product in different ways. And their perception of the value is different. And there is only one way for us to understand those different users, right? We need to watch them. Because at the end of the day, and for a second, I will define maybe three major groups of users: the innovators, the early adopters, and the early majority. Now, the innovators are about 2% of the populations. They are going to use a new product because it's new. The most important thing about the new product is that it's new. They are enthusiastic amateurs about something new in their space. The early adopters will be those that are basically saying, okay, let me understand the value proposition here. I like the value, let me try it. The early majority, which is about 1/3 of the population, and this is really a very significant group, they will understand the value proposition, but they are not going to try the new product. They are afraid of change. And what you mentioned earlier is that I think you belong to the early majority. By the way, I belong to the early majority as well. I might be building products, but because as a user, I don't like changes, I ended up with building them really simple. And there is only one way for someone that is building a product to understand that there are different types of users, and this is watching users. And then when they are not doing what you expect them, ask them why. And that's the only way for you to learn. That's the only way for you to learn and understand how to improve your product. Because at the end of the day, in order to be successful, in order to figure out product market fit, and for a second, I would say product market fit is measured by one metric only: retention. People are coming back. If they get value, they will come back. If they don't get value, they don't. But wait a minute, in order for them to get value, they need to figure out where this value is and how to get to it, right? And so there is a process of adoption before even getting to the value. And this is where most people, their state of mind is very simple. I was doing just fine until now. I don't need this change. Change is scary for most people.
So back to your early adopters. So are you saying early adopters are like 2/3 of that? You got 2% are innovators, 1/3 are early majority, and then early adapters are 2/3?
No, early adopters are about 15%, right? And these are only the relevant addressable market, because after the early majority, there is the late majority, and it's another 1/3, and then the last group is something that I call Neverland, right? They will never use something new. The difference is that early majority afraid of change. They need someone to take them by their hand and show them the way. The late majority, they are afraid of change, and they are not going to change unless they are being forced to, right? So just imagine that electric vehicle is a new types of vehicles. It drives differently, and most people would say, I don't need that. I really enjoy my American muscle car, and I don't need that. But if there will be a regulation that prevents using fossil oil-based vehicles, then they will have to change.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. And then, like you're saying, if they get, it's pretty simple, right? If a customer gets value, they come back. If they don't, they don't, right? And it's pretty easy. I was at a Mercedes dealership the other day, and I went in. The service seemed to be great. The service tech seemed to be a great guy, and the woman behind the counter seemed very nice. And then I went to the sales floor, and I said, you know what, I might buy another new car, right? So I looked at some new cars, and I was pretty convinced I was going to probably buy a new car. And then that car, it was supposed to be done in a day. 3 days later, this changed oil. The change in the oil wasn't done yet. And I asked, why? And they said, oh, we probably should have called you, but it was, we're short of people. I said, okay, great. So when's it gonna be ready? They said it'll be at least another 3 days before we can get to it. So this is going to be 6 days when it's supposed to be a 1 day project. Well, that Mercedes dealership was just built. It's a beautiful Mercedes dealership with lots of cars to look at. They seem like they got everything in this place, right? But boy, you know what? They never called this after I went back and got the car because I had to leave town. Never got the service done on it. They never called to say, how was our service, and we apologize or anything else. And that seemed like a great dealership. And now I don't feel like I even want to go back to them again. There's 2 more Mercedes dealerships within 5 miles of where I'm at, right? So again, it's what you just said. Really hits home for me because I just remember this experience last week, right? But it's so true. If you deliver value up front, they're coming back. If you don't, they may never come back, right?
But I agree. In a new product, it's you need to figure out the value that you bring. But for the users, they need to figure out how to get to this value, and that's one of the most challenging parts when you're building new product, right? Because in many cases, you want to have so many features in that product, and you're basically saying, okay, you know what, I'm going to have these and these and these and these features by features by features. And you create complexity. And really what you need to create is simplicity. Because at the end of the day, if I would ask you, okay, great, so how many features are you using on any product, right? On Uber, and you'll tell me maybe 1, right? I call a cab, and that's about it, right? I order a ride, and that's it. And with Waze, maybe 2 of them, right? And with all the products that we're using every day, in 95% of the cases, we're using less than 3 features. That's it.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. That's me for sure. Okay. But tell us about these other startups you're involved in, and tell me about, like, let's say 2 that you're super excited about that you see amazing opportunity going forward.
Occasionally people ask me, so which one is your favorite one? And I tell them, look, I also have 5 kids. Do you want to ask that question again? And so obviously, the interesting question, and each one of my startups is solving a real problem, right? And to a certain extent, for me, it's always about solving problems. It's always about doing good and doing well, right? So I'm looking to create value. And the simplest way to create value is solve a problem. That's it. Moovit, by the way, was acquired by Intel 2 years ago for $1 billion. And I think that the companies that is making pretty significant progress today is Pontera, formerly Fix, and they are dealing with 401k. Because at the end of the day, if you look at the American market, you'll say, okay, 100 million Americans, their retirement saving is in 401k plans, right? And then you ask them, what are you investing at your 401k? And 90% of the people don't even know. When they sign up to join the new employer years ago, they say, yeah, we would like to have 401k, and they stuck with the default, whatever the default is. Now, the default is usually very conservative. And people actually in their retirement planning, they need to be very aggressive in terms of focusing on equity rather than money market or whatever. And the result is that you are not going to have enough money to retire. And so what Pontera does is essentially at the end of the day help people to retire richer. By enabling your financial advisors to actually provide your service on your 401k plans as well, or all the held away accounts, but essentially 401k is the majority of it. And we ended up with creating so much value to our financial advisors as the customers, and they are providing so much value to their customers that essentially we are going to help America to retire richer. As simple as that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's a big problem to solve.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like you're saying, the difference you're making, the impact you're making on lives with everything you're doing is so much fun, right? When you see a difference you're making, again, you think of Waze and what that's done for all of our lives. Now you look at Monterra, and you know, as you do this, what gets you most excited?
Right now, the book.
Yeah, what you know, in building these products, what gets you jazzed up the most? Is it mentoring the CEOs and watching them, you know, develop? Is it the customer base that you're serving and seeing them enjoy your products?
So it's a combination, right? But it's mostly the people, right? So I like to see the impact that I create for the life of people. And in particular, I like to see the impact that I can help the CEOs to, you know, to become better and better and better. And to a certain extent, this is why I wrote the book. So I can actually be more influential, create bigger impact, help more entrepreneurs to become more successful. Because in my mind, entrepreneurs are going to change the world and make it a better place. And if I can help them to increase their likelihood of being successful, then I did my share. And so right now I'm mostly excited about the book. Obviously, I'm excited about all of my startups and that are essentially creating a lot of value to a lot of users. In my mind, this is my destiny, right? Creating a lot of value to a lot of people.
Absolutely, and you're doing an amazing job. There's not many in the world that are doing as much as you are. So it's awesome. You're a young man to do all that you've done. So you got a lot of road ahead of you to do great things. You got any questions, Joey? You or if Chris, you got any questions to throw at Uri? I mean, he's a wealth of information. I know you guys are thinking about you know, the difference you can make in your lives.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Uri.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead, Joey.
Hi, Uri. I'm blessed to be on this podcast and hear what you have to say. It's very informational for me. I just had a few questions. So for younger entrepreneurs as myself, I was wondering, do you have any words of wisdom or experience that you or your businesses have changed for the better?
So you know, it reminds me a joke of a very successful CEO that never went on the press, and one day he decided that he's going to get a very short interview, and the interviewer asked him, so how do you become so successful? And he said, 2 words: right decisions. And so the interviewer asking, and how do you know how to make right decisions? And he say, 1 word: experience. Okay, but how do you gain experience? You say 2 words: wrong decisions. Don't be afraid to make wrong decisions. You have plenty of time to fix them. Don't be afraid to fail. And this is really dramatic. This is really critical in order to become successful. It's a long journey. You will have hundreds of failures, hundreds of things that you were 100% sure that they are going to work a certain way, and they don't. And none of them should discourage you. As long as the problem is still worth solving, go and solve it.
I like that. As long as the problem is worth solving, don't stop. Right?
Exactly.
Awesome.
At the end of the day, successful entrepreneurs, their most significant behavior is great, right? They don't give up. They don't give up.
Thank you.
Chris, how about you?
Yeah, that was awesome, Uri. So I have just a quick 2 questions for you. So, you know, after the massive success and exit that you achieved with Waze, what drove you to continue pushing after achieving such a massive success? And why do you think Google kept Google Maps going, which is arguably Waze's biggest competition?
So the first one is easy, right? My mission is to create more value, right? So obviously I will never rest. I will keep on creating more value. That's it, right? And I can create more value through building my own startup, through guiding others to build their startups, and through you know, presentations in entrepreneurship groups, and in particular through my book. Look, end of the day, there is sort of an underlying assumptions that if we are going to merge two major applications, then the result is going to be definitely the winning application. But we don't know that. What we could create is complexity for all previous users of Waze and all previous users of Google Maps. And right now, the use case is actually very different. And to a certain extent, if people are used to drive with Waze, if you will tell them that they need to switch to Google Maps, they might. But they might switch to something completely different, right? They might switch to Here We Go, which could be a better application, or to Apple Maps, or to something completely different. And the same with Google Maps, right? If you'll shut down Google Maps and tell everyone, okay, you should switch to Waze, then wait a minute. Waze is not good for pedestrians, right? And it's not good for public transportation. And it's not good for search the way the nuances that Google can present in the search. But it's definitely way better for commuters on their daily drive. And so the use case is slightly different, but the fact that you think you can merge applications into one and the end result is going to be better, it's not going to work. Or it might not work, and then you lose the market. And this is really something to remember. End of the day, use case is different. And people don't like changes, right? Every time that you issue a new version of a product, then the score on the App Store, if this is an application, is going to go down because people don't like the changes.
Okay, one more question from Joey. Go ahead, Joey.
What would you like your legacy to be?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
I was wondering, what would you like your legacy to be?
A better world. A better world, as simple as that.
Awesome.
So maybe one more thing, and this is really interesting and maybe leads into one of the most significant chapters in my book. And I spoke with many entrepreneurs that their startup failed and asked them why, what happened? And about half say the team was not right. And I kept on asking, okay, what do you mean the team was not right? And so they told me, okay, we had this guy not good enough, or this guy. So not good enough was one reason that I heard quite often. Another reason that I heard often was we had communication issues, something that I actually call the ego management issues. But then I asked them the most interesting question: when did you know that the team is not right? And the scary answer was that all of them told me within the first month. So you said, wait a minute, if you knew within the first month that the team is not right and you didn't do anything, the problem was not that the team was not right. The problem was that the CEO did not make hard decisions. Making hard decisions is hard. Making easy decisions is easy. This is why in most organizations, people don't like to make the hard decisions. And in a small organization like a startup, it will go all the way to the top, to the CEO, to make that call. Now, if the CEO doesn't make that call, this is where the problem rises, right? Because if there is someone that shouldn't be there, it's a small organization, maybe 10, 20, 30 people. Someone shouldn't be there. Everyone knows. Everyone knows, and the CEO doesn't do anything. And that's the problem. So in my book, there is a chapter that's called Firing and Hiring. And when I sent that first to the publisher, he said, no, it should be hiring and firing. And I said, no. Firing is hard decision. Hiring is easy decisions. And first of all, you need to learn how to fire in order to be able to hire good people, right? Because at the end of the day, in your hiring process, you will make mistakes. The key question is how fast do you fix those? And the key takeaway is that every new hire that you have, a month later, ask yourself one question. Knowing what I know today, would I hire this person? Now, if the answer is no, fire them immediately, because that person is not going to be successful. And the longer that they stay, the more damage that you create for everyone, for the organizations, for the rest of the people, and in particular for that particular person that they are not going to be successful here. They do deserve the opportunity to be successful, but it's not going to work out here.
Absolutely. That's such a great point. I mean, look at how politics ruins, our government, bad politics, and bad politics ruin businesses as well. As you get larger, there's a protective environment that sometimes occurs. They're focused on protecting their job, not hiring the best people, not promoting the best people. And boy, you better stay away from that. And a great CEO, as you said, is gonna fire when people aren't right for the team, and promote those that are. But boy, that's such a good point. Within 30 days, as you just said, you could probably see the odds are very high that you can see whether a person is somebody you would hire all over again or not. And
Exactly.
boy, if we think that way, so that's such a great point.
Awesome.
Chris, you got any more questions?
I got a lot of great moments to share.
Well, I'll tell you what. And I guess just a couple more things I would say. When I look at what you're doing, Uri, the business building is incredible. And I know you're an amazing mentor to some of the most aggressive entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs that want to be like you. And how much fun is that, right? I mean, I've been blessed to be able to mentor young entrepreneurs, and it's the best part of our lives is when we know we're sharing experiences with somebody that has a mind to solve problems, right? A mind to innovate and grow something. For me, it's all about just sharing experiences when I understand what part of their journey they're on, sharing my experiences. What's one thing that you would say you found creates great mentorship of entrepreneurs, because you only have so much time in your life, right? You can talk about a lot of stuff. You can tell people what to do, how to do it, maybe. But in my opinion, it's been just sharing my experiences once I seek to understand their challenges, share my experiences, or finding other people that have had experiences that relate to their challenge.
And I definitely agree that the mentorship is one of the most rewarding parts of my life. You help people to become more successful.
Well, you know what? Again, you're a blessing to this world, and a blessing that for me is a friend. So I appreciate the time you spent with us today. I'd like Chris to go over kind of the nuggets. We like to share what we see as the secrets of success for Uri, and then maybe people can think about that and translate that to their own lives as entrepreneurs. But Chris, what do you got for us, brother?
Yeah, awesome. Uri, if I could be so bold, I'd like to just throw one last question at you. So you mentioned how failure is kind of like a cornerstone of every success you've achieved or anyone around you has achieved. Can you kind of just let us know some tricks on how to become more comfortable with failure, or to maybe reframe it so it's not so painful?
The most important part is to get up, right? So you fell down and then you get up, and the more that you practice that to that extent, the more that you feel confident that the next time that you will fail, you'll be able to get up. And the best way, by the way, to do that is the next generation, right? Your kids. You don't need them to be perfect. You need them to experiment. You need them to come home with a crazy idea, and you should tell them, why don't you give it a try? And if they fail, then nothing happens, right? Because if you're going to punish your kids if they fail, they will be afraid to fail. And therefore, they will not try new things. And therefore, they're not going to become as successful as they could be.
Love it.
Awesome. Great. So now I'll go over the nuggets, and there were a ton of them. Make your destiny to create value. I think that's a great kind of underlying philosophy. Age is a state of mind. People don't stop dreaming when they become old. They become old when they stop dreaming. That's a great way to reframe aging. Entrepreneurship is a journey of failures, as we just discussed. Fail fast and fail forward. If you're afraid to fail, you've already failed. Figure out product market fit or die. You've never heard of a company that didn't figure this out. And once you figure it out, you don't change the product market fit. No one can compete with good enough and free. Taxi drivers market increased 3x thanks to Uber, something they initially very strongly resisted.
They still strongly resisted.
Yeah, they still strongly resisted. It's a great idea to ask yourself what will make you and your company irrelevant in 5 to 10 years. Who will still be in the top 10 companies in 10 years? Probably only 5 of them. The biggest enemy of good enough is perfect. The only way to get feedback from users is to launch. There's no right or wrong way to use your product, just different users. Product market fit is measured by one metric, and that is retention. And finally, create simplicity, not complexity.
Chris, you captured a bunch of them, buddy. The couple that stood out to me, I know all those are awesome, and boy, there's so many. If we talk to Uri for 2 hours, we're gonna have 150 different things to talk about. But I always respected his when I think of Uri, right? I think of a troublemaker, right? He's and I love the way he said that. Entrepreneurs are troublemakers. They're disruptors, right? They find an industry, they find a problem, and they're troublemakers, right? Because the rest of the market doesn't like them, especially initially. Now later on, they might find that he was a blessing, like he has been, right? To many of the problems he solved. But again, entrepreneurs are troublemakers. Be a disruptor, right? I often say differentiate or die, right? That's kind of the thing I've said for a long time. And I believe that, right? If we can't differentiate and provide a value proposition that our competition can't, we probably don't deserve their business. And Uri's the king of this, right? So I really appreciate your time today, buddy. And it's amazing. You come to America, you got to give me a call. And if I'm planning a trip to Israel coming up as well, so I want to stop and see if it's buy a dinner there. And if you come here to Chicagoland area or Florida, Southwest Florida, I'd love to hang out with you and just get to catch up with you again.
Cool, that will be awesome.
Yeah, Uri, where can people find out more about you and your book and everything you're working on?
Adi, can you help here?
Obviously, I can. So we have Uri's website. Where you can learn more about the book. The book can be purchased at, I think, all online retailers and bookstores as of January 17, and it can also be pre-ordered. I can send you some links to the book. And if you want to share what you've learned from this recording, already on your social media, I can help you with photographs or whatever information you need.
Awesome. And is there a place where I can buy a couple hundred books? And is there hardcovers as well as soft covers?
Yes. The book is only hardcover for now. There's also Audible already and ebooks. And if you want to buy several hundreds, you can contact me. And I'll help you. I'm
going to be contacting you, kiddo. So I appreciate it. I want to get a couple hundred of these books. And I think any entrepreneur out there that cares about entrepreneurship and promoting it should buy a box of these books too. How many a box are there? 50?
I have no idea how big the boxes are.
All right. Well,
out there's a real big box, right? It's like 400 pages, right? It's a big book.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you know what? Again, anybody out there that's a real entrepreneur that loves to share their entrepreneurial values, boy, buy this book and distribute it to all your friends. If you're a real friend, give it to 100 friends. So I really appreciate you, Uri, and your time and you as a friend. Don't be a stranger, okay?
Thank you. Thank you,
everybody, for tuning in to Ditch Digger CEO today with an amazing friend of mine, Uri Levine, and what a blessing he is to this world today and the future. So thanks everybody for showing up. Thank you, Uri. See ya.
Thank you. Take care.